it was hard. That change right there was the hardest part, was to know that I could have been making it that easy by just letting go of all these concepts that I had about the way things should be in order to be happy. I'd also like to point out again that coming from a business background that I did, building an internet retail business is what I did, and all these things. It doesn't matter what occupation you have. It doesn't matter where you are in life. The person that matters is just you. The source of your happiness is inside you. It's not out there. It's not when you get the next promotion. It's not all these things we set in front of us to attain and try to achieve. And there's no reason, when we start talking about the confusion that there is in the world, and that Amy's invite to you to, how did you put it, question what it is you know. I mean, that really is the starting point. Just to let go of what we know. And I think that as much controversy as there is, I mean, I see it all around. Right here in town, you can almost, the people walking into my studio, you can see it on their faces, their the way they're looking at things and the way the world is. You can see the frustration. And the more that each of us are able to let go of what we're seeing from the media, what we're seeing from what we need to do, what seems impossible, there's still a way to come together. And it starts within ourselves, and letting go of what it is we know, what it is we think we know.
You are listening to What We Should Have Learned in School. This month, we are going to be celebrating the life and legacy of my dear friend, Kelly Monsrud. And for those of you that may not know, that are new to the show perhaps, he actually was our podcast producer for the first couple years of our show here. And so I have a few episodes that I recorded with him. You'll hear his transformation from his own mouth, and you can see also how that relates to you in your own life and the possibility for you, despite the circumstances and stress that you're up against every day, to experience greater peace of mind and to experience greater emotional balance, well-being, and love in your relationships. Today's episode was originally called Letting Go, and it was when I interviewed Kelly when he was just taking on the journey of becoming an entrepreneur and starting his own business and finally breaking out of the rat race and that corporate cycle in which he did not feel fulfilled. So take a listen. We are doing a very special, as I would call it, very special interview today with a dear friend of mine named Kelly. He is in the business of music and technology. We've also worked together on conversations about something called the 3 Principles Understanding. And if you don't know what that is, we'll share a little bit more about that. But for right now, I'm just going to let Kelly take it away. Kelly, great to have you on the show. And would you share a little bit about your story, what you're up to with the folks that have never met you before?
Well, thanks a lot, Amy, for doing this with me. That's very excited about telling a little bit about what it is that I do. And those folks exactly who walk in the store experience what it's like at store. I said it again. I like to call it a studio, and I'm still having trouble defining that. When I first decided to do this, which was actually many years ago, I was too afraid to do it, of course. And I stayed as a person underneath the right-hand man of the owners in the 2 business I worked in for over about 20 years in business now with the schooling. I finally found out that being under the wing just wasn't for me, and I needed to go back to that dream of running my own business. And at the same time, music needed to come back into my life, I guess. So last year, I started to do some schooling with Carrie Cole Voice and Music out on the East Coast, and life has been different ever since. Music was really the core passion that I've had in my life, and I put it aside for numerous reasons and for lots of stories. It's hard for me to not talk about three principles, actually. I was considering how in the world I was going to explain how my business has thrived without it. I actually wouldn't know where to begin there. So I kind of want to let you guide me maybe towards that a little bit and see if I did in fact answer your question as to why it is that I've started this solopreneurship, if you will.
Great. Well, I think there's something so common and so human in your story, Kelly. I mean, as a fellow creative, as a fellow singer-songwriter, and it doesn't matter what it is, whether your passion is music or, like for Meg, I know her passion is travel and doing adventure sports, or I've got friends of mine who are writers. It's such a common thing that those things to which we have such a unique relationship with, those activities that we light up when doing, how easy it is for those to kind of stop having a presence in our life. And we're the ones that are, of course, either creating the space for those things or not. The three principles, how I would kind of describe it, is it's really a principle-based understanding of human experience. And it seems to me that the more that I learn about how my human system works, the easier it is for me to troubleshoot it when there's problems, the easier it is for me to know what right fuel to put in, depending on, what's ever needed for that day, for that mood. Has that been your experience with your discovery of again, your core humanity, Kelly, and how that relates to, of course, business and music from the inside out?
Yes, 100% so. Everything you said makes complete sense, and it's easy for me to expand on at this point because the journey's been just so awesome over this last year. As you were talking there, you can tell I've been listening to some podcasts. You said about creating a space. There was a time last year where I had met someone and had some of the experiences that were, well, directly in my experience from my upbringing, since Grandma brought me to church the first time, and at like maybe age 4 or 5, the spiritual realm has always been something very visible to me because I saw it as I was raised on the farm, the way I was raised, and how close we were to nature and things like that. Well, last year I had an experience with someone, an individual, where that space that was created or by kind of myself from inside out, when I decided to change my life and open my mind to the risk involved in following my true purpose, it allowed all kinds of things to start entering my own space, my own spiritual, my own wisdom, my own energy, mind, whatever you want to call it, the formless. And in experiencing this incredible shared space with this other person, also like-minded individual, I realized that that I wasn't alone, more or less, and that there is others that are like me, that even though in the community I'm in, that might, and there's probably lots of communities around the world where musicians and artists are looked at in a different sort of way. I knew I wasn't alone anymore. And I knew that that space that I was in was exciting. And I was already excited going into it. I dropped everything about myself because I had to change myself in order to move forward. I had to not be this business-minded person that I was under the wing of the owners anymore, task-driven everything had to be laid out in its perfect order, looking for happiness somewhere out there when it was all along, it was just right inside me. And experiencing that space with someone else just gave me the open-mindedness and the freedom to explore even more, and it hasn't really stopped. So I brought that to my business, and the space that I'm sitting in my chair right now, every piece of me, object that is left in my life, is still in this studio. So the whole space is me, and I keep trying to fill it up more and more. And it seems like the more that I do, the more the people that walk in feel that same very experience that I did.
Well, there's so many things that you're pointing at, and yet it's the same.
Right,
so
right.
It's all kind of this theme of this universal wisdom or creative force or connection. Another word people use is love. But all of those words are in my view pointing to the same thing. Again, this inside out experience of the world. And I am curious as to, when I speak with some folks, they have an idea that change is really difficult, that it takes a lot of work, that they have to implement certain techniques or study with certain teachers. And I just am curious as to what was your experience with change specifically? What does it look like for you?
When you say change, one of the things that I was drawn to instantly was when I realized that I could have known this so many years prior, how simple it was. And what you said at first there, to do things, to find this experience, and there's really, the less you do, the better it becomes. And it was hard. That change right there was the hardest part, was to know that I could have been making it that easy by just letting go of all these concepts that I had about the way things should be in order to be happy.
That's beautiful, Kelly. And I want to just kind of, if I can make sure I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, that what you know now that you didn't know before was really the fact that each one of us is only living in the experience of our concepts at any given time, that we're only ever living in the experience of our own thinking and our own perception all the time, no exceptions. Am I correct in getting that that's what you're pointing us to, or would you like to further elaborate on that?
We're always, yes, but we can drop those concepts if we're in that thinking. Let's think of a story. Even just yesterday, I was at a job site. And of course, these job sites are amazing to begin with. Some of the things that are coming out of it, I had no idea how I was going to make it through. Every month I've made it through, and I just do. Well, here it comes, this awesome job. Anyways, I'm on the job site and getting towards the end, but still have a ways to go. And the internet connection started getting poor, and that's when I was like, oh, this customer, this. This is really important that I keep this guy happy, the connection that it was and things like that. And I got a little worked up and stuff, but I noticed that right away. And I looked outside. I looked at his house. It's a gorgeous house. He caught this huge, I don't know what you even call them, swordfish or whatever. They got the big long nose, and it's all he's a hunter and all this stuff, of that fancy, beautiful, gorgeous house. And I can tell by the decor and everything is just like, so guess what? No more internet problem. and then of course, by me, knowing my music side, there was an old piano. I'm like, there it was right next to his home office. I'm like, let's see what this piano sounds like. It's way out of tune. Kind of like I was there a little bit. But I just fell out of it. I just let go of it. And I ended up in that moment, because of my business, like I say, Kelly Monsrud Music and Technology. Well, I was all wrapped up in the technology part, but music brought me out of it. I ended up getting so inspired by this out of tune old piano. I took a picture of it and sent it to my daughter, and I said, because she's played an out of tune piano for years too. It was our own, and she's coming around to music, and I sent her a picture and played a tune and recorded it. And you know how we can send that in our text nowadays. And hey, we should make it our little quest in our music journey to find pianos randomly wherever we go around the world and kind of drop the tears of the universe on the keys every now and then and put them in a collection and just keep them. She's like, that sounds like a good idea, Dad. I'm like, all that. When I left yesterday, I can't describe. The next moments were just amazing. It was like I wasn't even... And here I go. I'm off on a story. But this is what it's like. How do I describe it better? And here again, this is where it's hard for me to have a conversation about how well my business is going without talking about three principles. So, I'm fortunate enough to be able to be talking to the person that introduced them to me. So, this is really a blessing. I have to be able to share this. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kelly, Kelly and I started kind of talking in this kind of educational way, again, of how human experience unfolds without giving any prescriptions. So the three principles is not a cult, okay? We're not, you didn't drink any Kool-Aid, did you, Kelly?
No.
There's no prescriptions of what an individual should do, how they should do it. And ironically, Kelly, what I get when you're sharing your story so authentically is that you're having this moment-to-moment experience of being in the present, of living in the now, but you're not attempting to go there. It's happening in an effortless kind of way. You didn't have to sit down and go meditate. You didn't have to go reframe your thinking when you noticed that you started to get off balance and get whatever that internal storm was of stress, when the internet connection wasn't working. And this is the potential of this kind of conversation, is that it's fundamental to every other technique that's out there, because it's simply pointing at how the human experience unfolds, and it unfolds the same way for everybody. Now, granted, our circumstances are completely different. You brought up your upbringing. That absolutely is different for everybody. Circumstances are absolutely real and exist. But if we can bring it back to what's universal about human beings, what's on offer for everybody is what Kelly is so beautifully illustrating, and that's a freedom of mind, no matter what circumstance you're in. And it's not just woo-woo, airy-fairy stuff. This is really practical stuff. It's helpful. It's helpful to take action from a state of mind that is clear, or to have clarity, instead of, how I can describe how my life used to be before having this conversation. And I studied a lot of psychology, a lot of personal development things. And not to say there's anything wrong with that, but I still had a misunderstanding fundamentally of where my experience came from. So it was like I was a ball in a ping pong machine going back and forth. And, if I fell in love with this guy, life was the best in the world. Oh, my dog died. Now it was like, oh my gosh, all these emotions are, or my my bills were late, all of a sudden, all of these circumstances then look like things were happening to me, that I was a victim. And the more that I've kind of played in this idea that that's not true, the easier it is for me, like what Kelly's describing, the easier it is for me to deal with the logistical, absolutely real things in my life in an efficient way that they get solved quicker and with less mental strain for me. I just think it's beautiful what you're pointing the listeners to, Kelly.
Well, I appreciate that. I did catch from what you said there and how I brought up my upbringing, my situation, and music and technology, and maybe associating the music and my daughter there like that. I'd also like to point out again that coming from the business background that I did, building an internet retail business is what I did and all these things. It doesn't matter what occupation you have. It doesn't matter where you are in life. The person that matters is just you. The source of your happiness is inside you. It's not out there. It's not when you get the next promotion. It's not all these things we set in front of us to attain and try to achieve. I remember Meg is on the phone too. She's talking about fitness. The relationship I have with my body is much different now. That body is what gets me around to be able to share these experiences with other people. It's important that I keep this thing working, and it makes me feel better, and my light shines bigger when I feel good. And we might say that, well, that's easy to say, but I can tell you I was way overweight. I mean, my recovery from that is unbelievable, but it wasn't because, here again, it wasn't so much I made a schedule and a routine. In fact, I still haven't even stepped on a scale. I don't even want to measure it because I'm talking to my body from inside. I'm saying, come on, my soul, or that inner part of me that knows the message that needs to get out, that says, I want to be heard, just like any of us want to be heard, no matter what we do. We've got to talk to that body and have an agreement to say, okay, you and I, we've got to get along because I'm not able to do what I need to do. Come on, let's go. I don't know. I look at it, everything like that, a lot more lightheartedly, but just that everyone has the ability to find this because we were given this. These two, Meg and Amy, are going to do this retreat that I've been so excited about all year, and I might not be able to go, which is one thing or another. But when I consider it's being called a retreat, right?
Yes.
It's a retreat. I was thinking about this the other day. I'm like in war when they say retreat, fall back, and they're running away from something, running away from the enemy. When you think of a vacation, I need to get away. I need to get away. I can't, all these problems and everything else. If you fall back into yourself when you go to this retreat, you'll be coming home already before you left home, and you will realize by the time that you go back home that you really didn't. You get back home from vacation and you unpack your suitcases and you realize you got to go back to that job, and you think you've got all this new attitude, and about 6 hours into your day, you're right back to where you were before. And you're like, why? This vacation was supposed to make me feel better. I'm supposed to be happy now. I haven't figured out how to perfectly describe it, but that happiness is there by just letting go of the thoughts and enjoying the moment. Like when I let go of the fact that the internet was slowing me down and that this client was going to be upset, I didn't really do anything. I looked around, and maybe I can relate this again to my upbringing with nature. I just looked around my surroundings, and that anything, even an object, can pull my train of thought. That's how many thoughts are going through our. And if we attach, we have this tendency to attach to the worst ones.
Yes, we do.
Oh, and we hold them and we build them up like this big mountain of the only way. It's like this mountain of happy that even if you wanted to, the fences get higher and the walls get bigger because you're just not looking at the person standing on this side of the wall. And if you turn around and just look, there might be a completely different version of life. Like when you were sitting on that park bench, Amy. You should tell that story again. I've been talking too much. Yeah.
Well, there's so many great nuggets of what you're sharing, Kelly, and I'm sure that listeners, some listeners at first glance may think, well, no, my happiness and security does come from my husband or my job or my career or my lack of a career, whatever that could be. But secretly, everybody is kind of onto this. So if you're getting that kind of knee-jerk reaction of feeling pessimistic or how this is practical in your life, I invite you to just sit with that and just start to be aware that this may be a lens through which you live life. But it's just one lens of life. It isn't the absolute reality. It's just an opinion. It's just a perspective. Because as human beings, we are physical bodies, like Kelly said, and we will always, therefore, be interpreting things. We don't have direct access. Our brains are sitting in this dark skull. They don't have direct access to the world outside. They only rely on signals from the body and impulses in our brain to make meaning of that. So there's something beautiful about this piece that Kelly's sharing that everyone kind of knows, or they've seen people go through this. As singers, think of our idols, Kelly. We were told growing up that if you're a famous singer, that then you'll have it all when you've got the wealth, the fame, the girls, the whatever. But yet so many extremely talented, successful singers kill themselves, or they're addicted to drugs, or they've gone through 8, divorces or whatever. So clearly, if we really get honest with ourselves as a race, we can see that things aren't lining up to how we think it is, or how the media, or again, our dominant cultures would lead us to believe. So I really encourage everybody on the call to really question what they think that they know, and to start realizing that we are all human. Everybody has insecure moments. Even the rock stars do. So there's this piece of it was a big moment for me, Kelly, when I realized that, similar to what I think you've been sharing and realizing yourself, that, hey, wait a minute, there's nowhere to go but here, because I'm always bringing my human self with me. Even if I'm making $1 million a year, I'm going to have moments where I'm anxious. I'm a human being. That's going to happen. So then it became that it made less and less sense to keep acting as if I was less than because I wasn't a famous singer, or because I wasn't a millionaire, or because I didn't have the perfect relationship and the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids.
Yeah, exactly. And that works with any, occupation too. It is easy for me to relate to the music part and the rock and roll, the whole thing, looking at it. It's about following that purpose more than anything. You discover yourself, and you become that as much as you possibly can. And there's no reason, when we start talking about the confusion that there is in the world, and that Amy's invite to you to, how did you put it, question what it is that really is the starting point. And just to let go of what we know. And I think that as much controversy as there is, I mean, I see it all around right here in town. You can almost, the people walking into my studio, you can see it on their faces, their the way they're looking at things and the way the world is. You can see the frustration. And the more that each of us are able to let go of what we're seeing from the media, what we're seeing from what we need to do, what seems impossible, there's still a way to come together. And it starts within ourselves, and letting go of what it is we know, what it is we think we know.
Absolutely. I would like to know if Meg, you have any questions or comments before we close up today.
It's been awesome listening to you guys describe kind of like the three principles to everybody so that they understand what it is a little bit better. Coming from somebody who is a coach in it and somebody who is practicing it themselves after being coached in it, I think it's awesome to get both views. Kelly, just for your viewers, you know, if you want to share this to anybody, is there anything about your business that you would like to share for people that might be interested in working with you, and how it is that you would go about working with them or anything like that?
The biggest thing that I'd love to do is connect with artists that want to collaborate or co-write and do some demo production work as I do with Amy. I'm sure she would be willing to share her experiences, whether they've been bad or good or otherwise. But that, as far as me being able to offer something, I can do that globally as I am already. So that would be great. Easy as it is to get a hold of people nowadays. My email is just my name, which is kelly.monsrud, KELLY MON as in Nancy SRUD @gmail.com. So, yes. Wow, what a treat.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And we're almost out of time, unfortunately. But Kelly, if you could share what is, this might be a loaded question, but what's the biggest difference that understanding where your human experience has come from has made on your life?
It would be the fact that I'm going to maybe say it in a way that's kind of hard to grasp, but I can live in form and accept the formless and almost feel as if not having control is the best, most awesome, wonderful happiness of experiencing every moment that it's indescribable. And it brings out nothing but new insights